All right. Be great. Guys, go ahead. How's everybody doing today? First of all, Happy New Year. We're excited about being here and having the opportunity to play in a Rose Bowl, which is a fantastic opportunity for our players and playing against a really good team. Excited to be in the playoffs. Proud of the way our team has sort of developed through the season and overcome a lot of adversity and showed resiliency to have the opportunity to get here. So now it's all about, can you finish? And that's why we play the games. So, questions?
Coach Saban, Coach Harbaugh has been outspoken in his belief that revenue sharing should go towards players, including television deals. For example, Big Ten has a $7 billion television contract, SEC a $3 billion television contract. Do you think that players should receive part of these $1 billion revenue sharing deals with television deals?
Look, I think name, image, and likeness, revenue sharing, and all these things are a really, really complex issue. And I do think that they're worthy of discussion. And I'm all for, the players being benefited in a very fair, economical way. But I don't think this podium here is the opportunity or the time to really have a discussion about that. We'd like to focus on the game, something that we worked hard for all year long, and hopefully we'll be able to prepare well, sort of go out and play well. That's really what I'm focused on right now. But I do think it's a complex issue, and I do think it's worthy of discussion. I just don't think this is the right place to discuss it.
Coach, how do you feel about this break? You guys have been really well against Georgia, but you haven't won. Are you worried about that? Because you guys were hot at the end, or are you not worried at all?
Well, I think you're always concerned about when you have a layoff, how are you going to respond? I've had a lot of confidence in our players. I trust our players. I think they've worked hard to prepare for this game. But you got to have the right mindset, and you got to know what it takes to go out and play against a really good team. And there are always concerns, about how are we going to respond. But I think I have those concerns when we play every week. So just because we had time off, it's really no different.
Nick, how did you think the team first prepared Texas and then USF in consecutive weeks?
Well, I think what we did as a staff and as an organization is we tried to focus on what we needed to do to improve and get better and how could we make our team better. I do think the players responded magnificently to the challenges that we had. Really focused, wanted to prove something. We're not happy with the circumstance that they created for themselves. So that was a real motivating factor for them. And I thought our coaching staff did a really good job of sort of making the corrections and adjustments that we needed to make to give our players the best opportunity to be successful, and they responded well to it, and it worked out really well.
It almost seems like you were in Harbaug's high end. Just judging by your interviews throughout the season.
Well, I think that if you're a competitor and things aren't going the way you'd like for them to go, you certainly get motivated about it. But it was sort of inspirational to me that the players, sort of bought into this whole thing of trying to get better and to prove something. And, coaches wanted to do a great job for them. So it was inspirational in some ways.
Coach, as a coaching staff, do you think it's easier or harder to prepare for a game when you have this much time?
Well, on one hand, because you have more time, you can say you get more repetitions, so you could be more prepared because of the repetitions you got. On the other hand, the other team's got more time to change up some of the things that they've always done, which you don't know what those ghosts might be. So you may not be prepared for some of those things. So it kind of goes both ways. Yeah, well, this is fantastic opportunity for our players. The Rose Bowl does a great job from hospitality standpoint. Um, they have the reputation of being the granddaddy of them all, and kind of growing up in the Big Ten, I think for 12 years, that was always the goal. Can you get to the Rose Bowl? But every bowl that we've been to and every opportunity that we've had to play in the Orange Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Peach Bowl, I mean, whatever the venue was, um, it's always been first class, and the people that are responsible for all those bowls, including the Fiesta Bowl, um, all do a wonderful job. And I think we're just pleased and happy to have the opportunity to be here.
Coach, we're talking about
From that standpoint, I was talking to a bunch of former players who grew up in Michigan as huge Wolverines fans. Was similar cold for you. What does that 90 Toledo team still mean to you?
Well, that was my first year of being a head coach, so um, instead of tying for the championship, if I'd have been a little better back then, maybe would have won it. but but anyway, I have great respect and admiration for the players on that team. My first opportunity to be a head coach, you never know how players are going to respond, but they really bought in, and it was really different for them the way we approached it and the way we did it, and they bought into it and had a really good season. And I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for that. Probably appreciate that group more than they know.
I was going to say, you said you appreciate that championship as much as any of the national titles you won. Why is that?
Well, I appreciate the high school championship we won in 1968 or 1969. I think there's a special sort of bond that goes with a team that wins a championship. Everybody sort of buys in. Everybody does what they need to do. That's what you're always sort of, trying to develop from a psychological disposition standpoint, as a coach. And when a group does it and they have success, it's a great feeling, and it's really kind of special. So you don't kind of forget it.
Hey, Coach, you spoke a lot about how much you enjoyed this team from the start. You see the winter conditioning during the season. What has this team become well for you, and the joy they've given you as a coach in your competitions with these guys this year?
Yeah, well, this team's been fun because the relationships on the team is really good. The leadership on the team is really good. The buy-in that the players have has been really good. And I think that, you're always trying to develop guys putting the team first. Everybody can have more success if we all play together. And people buying into the principles and values that help them do that, having positive energy about trying to do that, being able to be responsible to do your job at a high level and a high standard is something that we sometimes as fans can take for granted, that that's just something everybody wants to do, but it really is pretty special when you have a group that does that, and this group certainly did, and that made it a lot of fun to be around them, and the relationships on the team made it even more inspiring.
Coach, talking about your staff earlier, I wanted to ask specifically about Tommy Rees, the buy-in that he's got from the offense this year. What has stood out about his style of coaching to you in his first year?
Well, Tommy's done a fantastic job. I was really impressed with Tommy when we, spoke to him about taking the job. He's very bright. Players respond well to him. He's a really good teacher. He's a really good quarterback coach. I think he's done a magnificent job of, developing all of our quarterbacks. You see Jalen all the time, but I think they've all improved under his tutelage. No, he's very. He's got really good planning ability in terms of, you always look at the opponent, and you want to have a plan for how to attack the opponent, and then get the players to buy into it and execute it. And I think that's something that he's done a really, really good job of. And, he didn't sort of stay in a place of this is what we're going to do no matter what. We kind of adapted and changed, what we needed to do to feature the players that we had. And I just think he did a marvelous job of that, and it really sort of transpired our team offensively, which I think had a lot to do with the success that the team had. Yeah, well, Will's, record speaks for itself in terms of his sort of ability to make big kicks in big games. And, I have all the faith, trust, and confidence in Will that anybody could have in any player. And he's not let us down very often, but would certainly be supportive of, any situation like that he gets in, that he'll do his best, and we'll do our best to support him.
Kevin Steele was saying that you're the same guy he knew in 1984. Something about your energy level at 72 compared to what it was at 42, and just your engagement. Is it any more difficult to maintain it, or is it just always there?
You probably ought to ask somebody else that question. They probably could judge better than I can, but I've not changed through the years in terms of the process of what we go through to try to get the team ready on a week-to-week basis, or in the off season, or spring practice, summer conditioning, whatever part of the program that you have to try to build the team. I've not really changed how we go about that, or how much time it takes to do it, or the energy level that it takes to do it, because I kind of think there's one way that you go about these things, there's one way that you do it, and I've never really ever deviated from that. There's been some times when I'd say, why don't you smarten up and take a day off someplace. That comes from Miss Terry more than me, but it is what it is, and I wouldn't feel comfortable and confident that if I didn't go through the process of what we go through on a week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis to try to build a team, that I would be unfair to the team if I didn't do that.
What are the silver linings that competition? You discussed not pulling the cake out of the oven too early. What kind of cake has Jalen turned into?
He's done fantastic. I mean, he's got a lot of confidence. I think he trusts and believes in, the plan that we've had week in and week out. He's done a really good job of trying to execute the plan. He's been a guy that has constantly improved. His ability to self-assess and know when he did things correctly and when he could have done it better has always been good. And his positive energy has really been had a huge impact, I think, on our team as well as on the offense. So obviously, he was the most inspirational player and also the most valuable player voted upon by his teammates. So, that in and of itself sort of tells you, the impact that he had in a positive way. I can't hear you, buddy. It's kind of, first of all, I'm honored that anybody would consider me for anything. So from that standpoint, I guess the fact that there's interest would be appreciated. But never since I've been in Alabama have I ever considered going anyplace else. I think, no disrespect to you all, but you create a lot of that by your own speculation of what might happen. And that's okay. I'm not upset about that or disappointed in it. But the only frustrating thing about it is, does it impact our program? Does it impact what we're trying to do? Does it impact the players on your team, the players you're trying to recruit? That part of it is something that I've always tried to manage so that players didn't have to have that as a sort of an impediment that would affect their ability to be successful. I think that's the hardest thing. I think it's one of the most difficult things as a coach to, on a consistent basis. You know, consistency in performance is uh, really, really difficult to sustain. And, you know, it's a part of human nature that when you have success, you're supposed to get rewarded for it, which means, do I have to work just as hard? Or should I be able to, you know, sit in my easy chair and eat Tostitos and cheese? That's kind of our culture. And there is a lot of rat poison out there when you have success. You know, people talk about you in a positive way, and you have to be able to manage that. And I think from just a human nature standpoint, it's much more difficult to manage success than it is when you have failings. When you have failings, everybody is motivated to try to prove that, you know, we can do better. And I think that was one of the stimulating factors for our team early on when we didn't play well. So now that we've had some success, you know, the challenge is can you stay focused and really trust and believe in the things that helped you to be successful, and, you know, continue to do those things at a high level so that you can have success. Yeah, I know Jim. I've known his family for years. Um, I loved his dad. When I was a young coach, his dad was a secondary coach at Michigan, and I was up and coming trying to learn how to coach a secondary, and he was always helpful to me. And I've always had a tremendous amount for the respect for the family. Um, you know, his dad was a great coach. John's a good coach. Jim's a good coach. Um, Tom Crean was on the staff with um, Coach Izzo at Michigan State, and, you know, we had a relationship, and he's married to Jim's sister. So I've had a tremendous amount of respect for the family for years, and, you know, they got a really, really good team. They're well coached. He's done a great job with this team, so I have nothing but respect and admiration for what he's been able to accomplish as a coach. Look, I coached at Ohio State and Michigan State, so you know, that's. I mean, Woody Hayes didn't even allow you to buy gas in Michigan if you were recruiting there when he was there. So I don't think I have any lingering feelings, but I know and respect the traditions of those rivalry games, and you know, this is a big game for our team, and that's what I'm focused on, is our team and what we can do to try to play well against a really good Michigan team.
How was this a different season from a lot of your other seasons in Alabama? Rat poison wise, is there a decreased amount of it because of the early?
Well, we had some really good rat poison early. You know, it was almost like Wheaties, all right, because everybody criticized us and said we weren't any good and we're done, and Coach Saban's past his prime and all that. I mean, it was like eating Wheaties, you know, breakfast of champions. That helped us. So now, can we handle the success? That's the next question. So.
Did you have less of the other kind, the bad kind, because the expectations were?
I think we had bad early, then we've had a lot of good lately, and I think we handled the bad well, and now we got to prove that we can handle the good and try to finish the season the way we'd like.
Why is defending the tight end so critical to your success? But in general, to go with that position?
Well, I think I've always said that the two most difficult matchups is when they have a mismatch running back or a mismatch tight end, because the guys that guard those guys are they the same kind of athletes? Because they're linebackers most of the time. So you always got to pay special attention to how you do things, so that are you allowing them to create those kind of mismatches in the way you play on defense? And that's very challenging sometimes, because that's not the only thing you have to stop. You know, you still have to stop the running. You still have to stop the other players that, you know, can be involved in play action passes and taking vertical shots down the field. And the team we're playing has a really good tight end, and they also have a really good running back, but they also have a good receiving running back. So they have opportunities to create issues and challenges for you as well.
Is he past his prime questions? Had he ever heard those before?
Yeah, I've heard them before. I think when you get my age, everybody's waiting for you to, miss a step. So it kind of is what it is.
Talk about, Coach, how's the camaraderie and focus of the team with all the extracurricular activities that are going on?
Yeah, well, I think my message to the team early on was you got to stay committed. It's a great opportunity for you. You've created a great opportunity for yourself. When you go to a bowl game, there's things that you can do that are really good experiences for you. But you really got to stay committed to what is the task at hand. So, when we're in meetings and we're practicing and those types of things, we got to be focused and committed to those things and stay committed to that and not allow the other stuff to sort of creep into your ability to stay focused when you need to.
Coach, who was you're an inspiration to a lot of people. Who was your inspiration to bring you to the point, the pinnacle where you achieved?
Oh, well, I've had a lot of great mentors. First of all, I had really good parents, growing up that I think sort of promoted the right kind of values in terms of compassion for other people, doing the right thing, being a good person, having great character. But then from a professional coaching standpoint, Don James was, my college coach. My high school coach had a tremendous impact on what it took to be successful. Then, George Perlis was a great inspiration when he was the first guy to give me an opportunity to be a leader as a defensive coordinator. Learned a lot of football from Bill Belichick. So, but I would say, Don James, who I played for, and who really was the inspiration to get me to be a coach, because I never really wanted to be a coach, but he was the one that recognized that, hey, be a graduate assistant for 1 year and see where it takes you. And I said, well, I don't really want to go to graduate school and I don't really want to be a coach, so why would I do that? So that 1 year turned into however many, 50, I guess. So, but he had a tremendous impact on me as a person because, he always promoted through athletics, through playing football, which I've adopted this through the years too with our players, is how can you create value for your future in terms of the lessons that you learn as a competitive athlete? And that's something that I've always tried to do with our players, but it's something that, he instilled in me when I was playing.
When you talk about all the changes and adapting, you talk a lot about adapting. Was there a moment when you realized you had to be flexible in just things you do, your approach, or things that you always been wired on?
No, I think you always have to, things are changing rapidly. I mean, they're changing in business. AI's changing things. Things that we have happening in college football are changing things. So you have to be able to adapt. I mean, I always say the dinosaurs couldn't adapt and they're not around anymore. So you have to be able to adapt to a constantly changing world. And if you look at the changes in college football in the last 3 to 5 years, it's probably changed more than it did in the 50 years prior to that. So not being able to adapt would be a huge detriment to continuing to be successful, I think.
But was there something that made you realize that, or is there an example that you've always sort of looked at as like, well, I don't want to go down that road?
Well, to be honest with you, probably COVID. I mean, when they told us on March 13th on a Friday that everybody had to go home, that was supposed to be our first day of spring practice, my first thing was, well, how are we going to adapt to this? So we bought everybody an Apple Watch and a scale and gave them a workout program and sent them home. But the fact that we did that and we stayed in touch and we had Zooms with the players all the time, we ended up winning the national championship. And I think it was because of the way we managed all the changes that COVID created. And that kind of made me realize, wow, man, when something comes up, you better be one step ahead of the posse so that you can adapt to those situations. So I really do think that was probably the thing that comes to mind. And our players handled it well. And I told the players, I said, whoever handles this disruption the best will have the best opportunity to be successful when we do play. And they did it. So, man, I tell you what, man, there's been a lot of third downs, a lot of first downs, you know, a lot of penalties, a lot of missed opportunities to call timeout when I should have, since those days. So I do remember Jim was a really, really good player, but I don't remember a lot about the games.
I was wondering if, like, seeing him play quarterback, how much maybe this year's Michigan team and his Michigan team from the last few years maybe emulated how he played as a player.
Well, you know, he was a great player, but I think football has changed so much. But you know, there's one common denominator. They're a physical team. They try to run the ball. They've got great play-action passes. So, you know, maybe the way that all gets presented is different, but philosophically they're very similar to the kind of team that he played on way back in the day.
When were you first made aware of any potential issues surrounding Catapult in your videos?
You know, I'm not concerned about that. I mean, our players have had every opportunity to get ready for this game just like any other game. So it's not an issue that I'm concerned about or that our players are concerned about or is worth discussing here, you know, 48 hours before the game.
Subscribe to the idea that Alabama, for a long time had the intimidation factor, and I know you alluded to it with people that kind of written you off after the Texas game. And did you feel like people were doubting the fact that that intimidation factor still existed in Alabama at that time?
You know, I don't know that I can necessarily agree with any intimidation factor. I mean, I think every team develops a character of their own by how they play and how they compete, and that's something that every team has to earn. And I mean, so I don't necessarily see things the way you do when it comes to that. I think you want to compete at a high level and play to a high standard, and that's always the goal. And you know, if that creates an advantage for you, so be it.
Past couple of days, some of your players have talked about how you've been joking a little bit more throughout the season and kind of relating with players. What caused that change? I guess what are you looking to get out of those relationships?
I don't know if that's really a change. You know, I've always done that with players. I think this may be the first time it came to light because I think you all have always painted me as a really serious, no nonsense. And I think that's probably true to some degree. But nobody's ever talked about the light side of things in terms of, you know, how I can have some fun with the players and have good relationships with them. But I think a lot of that comes from having respect for them and understanding what they're going through on a day-to-day basis, and try to make sure they understand that you appreciate that, as well as seeing them as not just a player but a person, and you care about what they do and you care about their future. You know, there's an old saying that says, you know, players don't care what you know until they know that you care. So, but that's always been a part of who I was. I just think that it's just been something that has been talked about lately.
Nick, as we enter this new era of college football, some of your players have talked about Alabama being the one standard for the country. How do you maintain the standard of the tide as we enter this new era and kind of throughout what's been a crazy last couple of years?
Yeah, well, it's going to be much more challenging because the circumstances around it have changed a little bit. I think one of the reasons that we've been able to be successful is it's always been our philosophy to create more value for players in terms of their future and helping them be successful, whether it's personal development and having the right sort of mindset to, you know, set goals, understand what they have to do to accomplish the goals, how they have to edit their behavior, the discipline it takes to do it, you know, behavioral issues and how they can create value for their brand by making good choices and decisions, getting an education. You know, I always tell players that you're going to college to prepare yourself for when you can't play football. There's nothing wrong with wanting to play in the NFL, but not going to be forever. It's not going to be for long. So we've always tried to create value for players' future. Now, that's changed a little bit in terms of dynamic of college football. It's not just about, that's what college used to be all about for all of us. We all went to college to do what? Have a better lifestyle when we graduated. So that's always been where we've invested everything that we could to help players be successful. And now there's a shift in a little bit of what can I get as a college player. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a shift. And but I still think it's important to try to create value for guys' future, and that they need to understand that this is why you're going to college, even though your quality of life can be better now because of what you can receive as a college player, which I'm all for. That's fine with me. So, but I really don't necessarily agree with guys choosing a school based on how much they can get. It still should be on what they can accomplish and what they can develop in the future. Yeah, well, I think cornerback is a position that, you're going to have 5 or 6 plays in the game that are going to be critical plays to make or not make, because they all could end up being big plays. And I think it's the nature of the beast that if you're out there playing for 65, 70 plays in a game, that you got to stay focused on every play, because you don't know when those 5 or 6 plays are going to pop up, when a guy's going to run a takeoff or a post corner or something where you got to be in great position to do it, and you got to focus, every play so that you're not in bad position that one play when it comes up. And I think that's the nature of the beast at his position, and I think when you're a player like him, you got to especially stay focused, because it may not happen as often, but when it does, you got to be able to respond, and you got to be in great position. Yeah, he's done a great job of that. He's really done a really good job all year for us. He's been very consistent, and he's made most of the plays that he needed to make. No, I call him Kool-Aid all the time.
Hey, Coach, you've made these bowl game trips for quite a while now. What is an essential that you have to bring to survive a bowl week? Some of your players say they bring their PlayStations, for example.
I think the big thing you have to be able to do is stay committed to why you came here. There's a lot of other things to do, and you should enjoy those things. But you also got to stay focused on what you need to do to play well in the game. And I think staying committed to those things are really important. Now, that doesn't mean you got to do it 24/7, but when it's time to focus, you got to be able to focus, practice, prepare, and get ready for the game. And hopefully our players have done a really good job of that.
Coach, how do you see Christian's story developing the program over the last 4 years?
Well, Christian's a really good athlete. He's a really smart guy. He's a high school quarterback, so he understands the game really well. And when he's had to respond to playing this season, he's done a really good job for us.
How about playing in the Rose Bowl for you? Where does it stack up in terms of the bowl experience, and how excited are you to get to be?
Look, this is a great bowl game, but it's really, I don't like comparison questions. I don't like to compare this to something else. This is, one of the greatest experiences in college sports, but I think all the bowl games do a great job of trying to be hospitable and creating an outstanding experience for the players. So this is great. I grew up in the Big Ten, so being able to come to the Rose Bowl has always been special. But I think in the 6 bowls that are involved in the playoffs, they're all pretty special.
How similar do you find it to what you guys do? Obviously, they do play a little more snow, but they do this once in action.
I think Michigan has a really good defense. I think their players do a really good job of executing it. They do create, quite a few multiples in terms of the things that they do. But I think it's very effective, and they've played it very well. So it's going to be very challenging for us to be able to read and see those things and get the ball in the right place at the right time. And they do a lot of, plug-and backers too. So getting a hat on a hat in the run game is also something that's going to be really important.
Coach, there's been a lot of talk about with the 12-team playoff, the lack of importance of the regular season, the lack of conference championships. Do you anticipate having to? Will you feel like there will be a lack of importance in big games next year, or do you think it won't be too different?
I don't think it'll be too different. I mean, the big games are going to be the big games, and there's always going to be speculation of who the best 12 teams are, just like there's speculation now who the best 4 teams are. Just like there's speculation in the NCAA basketball tournament when there's 68 teams in it, and then they have a 2-hour show talking about who got in and who didn't. So, but I don't see how it's going to minimize the importance of big games. No different than the NFL playoffs. I mean, people want to win the division. They don't want to be the wild card team. If you have a chance to be a wild card team, that's better than not being in the playoffs. Everybody's fighting for home field advantage. So I think all those things will exist in college football as well.
We've still got about 22 minutes. I know, just hang tight. I know it's a waste. The radio guys, I'm going to bring Chris Doring back over here like 5 minutes before we're done and pull you off and let you talk to him for a minute and then be done with it, So.
How are you? I wanted to ask you about the recruitment process at Caleb Downs. When in that moment you start to understand this kid's a little bit different. I mean, the parents and everything. He's got a background.
Well, Caleb was like special from the start. I mean, he's mature beyond his years in terms of wanting to be successful, the kind of character that he had. He's got great parents, great family. It was the first time I met him, I said, this guy's different. And I think different in a really, really good way. And that certainly turned out to be the case, no doubt.
What stands out to him as a player now you got your hands on him? What makes him be able to have the success he's had?
Yeah, he's really instinctive. He's a fast reactor. He's not intimidated by any circumstance or situation, and really, really committed to learning how to do things. He never wants to be wrong. And he kind of takes that approach to how he prepares. And I mean, just like learning the defense. I mean, he came up in the office every day from the time he got there to try to learn the calls, learn the defense, learn the adjustments. And that's not the kind of commitment that most freshmen coming in have. And it's obviously, paid off for us and paid off for him in terms of how he's played all year.
And with Justin, the incoming freshman from Germany, have you had an experience like that before where you've had a different circumstance recruiting a guy like that?
Well, yeah, we had, Jesse Williams way back in the day coming from Australia. We got an Australian punter. We got an offensive lineman from Finland. So I do think that the NFL, by expanding and having games in all over the world, basically, and in Europe, football has become a little bigger sport, there. And now they have some decent leagues where the kids develop and go up in. So I see it like basketball was like 15, 20 years ago when you started seeing guys come.
Kicker's a kicker, a punter's a punter. It translates pretty easily. But the translation part of
Yeah, I think one of the big things that helped us in his circumstance was, we had him in camp in the summer, and anytime you have these guys come from different culture, um, language barriers, all those kinds of things are all things that you have to try to make sure you address and that guys are understanding. Um, no different than the defensive lineman we recruited from Quebec. I mean, he's French speaking in the home. But I was at LSU, and some of the guys in South Louisiana, they spoke French in their home too. And when I was recruiting them and they didn't want me to know what they were talking about, the family started talking in French. So I was like, I guess I'm not supposed to know what's happening here.
You picking up any Cajun phrases?
I used to have one of the players that was a punt returner that was from Bow Bridge, and they spoke French in the house. I said, man, you got to teach me some French while we're back here catching punts. I never learned any.
Tommy was 30 when you hired him, Tommy Weeks, when he beat me, and did you ever feel like the stage was ever too big for you? You were young and you guys were struggling on offense.
No, I really liked Tommy. I thought he was bright. I thought he was, he did a great job in presentation. He does a really good job with the players. He's a really good quarterback coach. And the guy is smart, but he's got great teaching progressions in terms of, how he does things. So he's transformed our offense and transformed our team this year. And I think he's one of the best, coaches in college football.
Did you have any connection or anything like that? Did you have any connection?
I knew his dad, but other than that, didn't really know him. Knew of him, but didn't really know him.
Chuck Martin, I talked to Chuck Martin last week about him. Chuck coached him at Notre Dame. He said the thing about Tommy was when he played quarterback, he lost his starting job, but he never wavered. When they needed him late in the season, he stepped in and came through, which is what you want, obviously, in any coach. Have you sort of seen that with him this year, the way the season played out?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about the fact that, especially, some of the issues that we sort of worked ourselves through early in the season, he never wavered. He stayed committed and convicted to doing the things that we needed to do, but he was flexible. He wasn't inflexible in saying, hey, we got to do it this way. And I think that's how we sort of transformed, our offensive team to the players that we had. And he did a really good job of developing them.
SEC style of defense that is characterized. Does Michigan have those similar type of traits?
I don't think there's any question about it. This is, if they played in the SEC, they'd be one of the best defensive teams in the SEC. And, their scheme is a very, very good scheme, and they do a good job of executing it. They got good players. They got experienced players, and they don't make a lot of mistakes on defense. So this is going to be a real challenge for us offensively.
Have you got a team that's grown and changed over the course of a season as much as this one?
There was, I forget what year it was, but kind of went through a little bit of the same transition when Jake Coker became the quarterback. Early on we were playing different quarterback, changing back and forth, and then we finally settled on Jake, and the team started to grow around him, and we ended up winning a national championship that year. I forget the year, but yeah. So that team was a little bit like this team. So, but this team has been a lot of fun.
Is it rewarding when you see that, or do you even see that as the season's going on? Do you have to step back and
I think anytime you see a team grow and develop and improve, it's always what you're trying to get as a coach. Sometimes that's a little more difficult when everybody creates this expectation for your team, and there's a little more, I'm going to say, anxiety with everybody trying to meet those expectations rather than just focusing on what they need to do to be the best they can be. So it was fun this year to see these guys grow and develop.
So you got to do it kind of without that anxiety, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think that's we had something to prove all season after a bad start, so that kind of was more the incentive. Um, I always have, some anxiety, when you're getting ready because you want to try to get the team ready, and um, you never know exactly how ready they are until they go out there and play.
The changes in the sport. I know you've given your suggestions for what you think should happen. When you get presented with massive changes over the course of years, do you look at it as a puzzle to try to find?
Yeah, there's no question you have to figure it out. You have to adapt to, the changing environment and changing circumstances, and we try to do that the best we can.
Hey, Nick, when you look at the foundation of this program and everything you guys are doing, as to you look at that over 17 and the way those kids are brought in early when you weren't having early success to get you guys in the trajectory that you are in. I just wonder how much that team, that group of people, meant to what you guys have been able to do.
Well, there was a lot of guys on that team that contributed to the success in future years. But, we went through a lot with that team, and I think everybody learned from it. I mean, I think we were like 6-2 at one time, and then had to suspend 5 players for some NCAA thing that had happened in the past, and all 5 starters, and then we went 6-6 and won a bowl game. But the guys that came back from that team, they bought into what we needed to do, and we had a really good recruiting year, which they contributed to because they believed in what we were doing. So I think all those factors really contributed to 2008 being the start of a really good season for us, even though we lost to Florida in the SEC championship game, and really was the foundation for the whole program.
Julio was a part of the next class, right?
Lily was a part of the next class, yeah.
You finally got salt and pepper shakers on the table that year too, right? You finally got salt and pepper shakers on the table that year. I heard that story.
Yeah. Yeah, we did.
How much time do you spend with your team talking to them about the historic nature of this game?
I think there's 2 ways to look at it. There's the historic nature of the game, and then there's the game itself, which is you're playing in the playoffs, and you're playing against a really good team. And I think everybody sort of respects the tradition of the Rose Bowl, but at the same time, they also need to focus on what they need to do to try to play well in the Rose Bowl, which is all about playing against the team we got to play against.
Back when you were at Michigan State, if you were to look forward into this part of your life, did you ever think that you'd be in a Rose Bowl game getting ready for a national semifinal way back then? Because I mean, that you were kind of affiliated with it being in the conference.
I think way back then I was trying to just keep my job. I wasn't thinking much about what's going to happen in the future, but we did play in the Rose Bowl when I was a defensive coordinator at Michigan State in 1987, I think. Played in the Rose Bowl here in 2003 against Texas. We actually played in the Rose Bowl in 2020, but it was in Dallas instead of California. So, and all those have been wonderful experiences, but and we'll certainly doing everything we can to. And the Rose Bowl's been great for our players. Their experience has been wonderful, but keeping them focused on trying to play against a very good Michigan team.
Did you think about moving your practice indoors anywhere because it was raining today?
Yeah, we did, but I think it's supposed to basically not be raining this afternoon, and we have a turf field down where we're practicing, so we'll probably just, if the field's too bad, we'll just go on the turf.
I remember when the playoffs started, I remember you predicted what was going to happen to the whole system in general. Do you have any experiments like this about next year in college football, just kind of what the whole postseason situation is going to be like?
Yeah, well, I think the bigger the playoff gets, the more it minimizes bowl games. And, you know, one of the great traditions of college football for many years was you had a great season, you got to go to a bowl game. It was great for the players, you got a lot of positive reinforcement. Maybe you didn't win the championship, but you had a good season. Great for the fan base. But that's as soon as we started having playoffs, which is a good thing too, I'm not complaining about that, it started to minimize the importance of bowl games. And the more we expand the playoffs, which I'm not against, I'm for, it minimizes, you know, the importance of bowl games.
Coach, I talked to some of your teammates about if you had a special teams issue, you had to have someone kick that wasn't on special teams, who would you pick? Because they said Shaquem Otis used to kick in high school, and that would be, he said he had a 40-yarder. Would you go with Shaquem?
Well, we got 3 kickers on this trip. So, again, you're asking me a hypothetical question that I hope never, ever happens. But it brings to mind that, you know, when you're in the NFL, you only got 1 kicker. So Michael Dean Perry, when I was at the Cleveland Browns, he was our backup kicker. And I don't know if very many people knew that, but he can make an extra point, a 30-yarder. So Jaheim's a really good athlete, so it wouldn't surprise me. I've never seen him kick, but maybe we need to try him out.
He said he's got 40 yards in him.
We'll see.
Coach, it seems like there's a subtle difference between a good team and a great team, and then a great team and a championship team. It's just a game of inches. What's that 1 or 2% that separates a great team from a championship team?
I think it's probably a lot mindset, how important it is to the players, because a good team's going to have good players, a great team's going to have good players. The championship team's got to have good players, but probably the mindset, their ability to sustain, to focus, to execute, to buy into the things that it takes to play winning football, whether it's, you know, discipline, togetherness, buying into the principles and values of what it takes to be successful, positive energy and attitude, leadership. There's so many things that contribute to it, and but I think you got to have all those elements if you're going to win a championship.
How much of that is developed versus you're trying to recruit the right guy?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's hard to develop if it doesn't exist. I think if it exists, it needs to be developed.
Where does the ability to generate and prevent big plays sort of rank on the checklist of success in a given game?
I think the 2 probably critical factors in determining, statistically I'm talking about, success in football is turnover ratio and explosive plays. Those 2 things probably are 1 and 2 in terms of what impacts the outcome of the game the most.
Last one, guys.
Jermaine has obviously done a great job of that this year. Is that something? Is that one of the reasons you wanted him? Is the ability to generate? You know, he's averaging like 22 yards a catch, which is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, well, we knew he had big playability. I think you always need to have guys like that at the receiver position, and he's certainly done an outstanding job for us in terms of not just explosive plays, but in playing his position top to bottom.
All right, guys, thank you. Coach got to do a couple other things before we wrap up.